Chairman Rohrabacher, Ranking Member Meeks, and distinguished members of the committee. It's a great privilege for me to be here today, and I thank you for this opportunity. Europe is where China subverts our curbs on the acquisitions of sensitive technologies. Whether China is revolutionary or just merely revisionist, and I think it's revolutionary, but whatever it is, it has to dominate technology if it's going to realize its broad and ever-expanding ambitions. Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, has his Made in China 2025 initiative, which seeks self-sufficiency in 10 critical sectors. It is the heart of his industrial policy, and his industrial policy is the heart of his plan to become the #1 economy. Chairman Rohrabacher talked about China's predatory trade practices. Clearly, CM 2025, which the Chinese know it as, is a grand assault on the WTO. Now, to achieve the goals that Xi Jinping has, one of them is to give assistance for the acquisition of foreign technology. And government support is probably the best reason why Midea Group, which is a home appliance maker, microwaves, air conditioners, why it, in 2016 and 2017, acquired KUKA AG, which is Germany's foremost robotics company. Yeah, companies diversify all the time. But in this particular case, where you see a company stray so far from its geographical area, so far from its core business, that government direction is the best answer for why this occurred. Beijing's preferred target, of course, is American technology. And here we've seen China very shrewdly invest in startups, also scoop up distressed American tech companies. And Ranking Member Meeks talked about the changing mix of China's investments into Europe. Well, you can see the changing mix in the United States as well with technology. China's technology investments seem to have followed in the last half decade two things. First of all, the Made in China 2025 initiative, plus also China's two 5-year plans, the 12th and the 13th. Now, Chinese tech acquisitions in the US have gotten harder. There's been more clamps on this. Ranking Member Meeks asked, well, what can we do? And part of this is, we have to see what the US does, and hopefully these lessons rub off on the Europeans as well. So for instance, in that KUKA acquisition, we did not stop it, as the United States might have been able to do because of our approval process. But we did stop in December 2016, one of the last acts of the Obama administration, was the acquisition of a subsidiary of Axtron, the German chip equipment maker. And that, I think, was a very important turn, because we see the Trump administration following that example with two disapprovals of Chinese acquisitions. Interesting, we see Shenzhen-based Huawei Technologies. It is the world's largest maker of telecom equipment. Because of its connections with the People's Liberation Army and with Chinese security services, it has largely been shut out of the American market, and that's a great thing. But the one thing that Huawei has done is, after being shut out of the US, it has moved into Europe and now derives something like 35% of its revenues from the continent. We have seen other Chinese companies also adopt this shun the US, embrace Europe concept. The Chinese are acquiring a lot. We heard from Mr. LaCour some statistics from Bloomberg. What's fascinating is that in this 10-year period that Bloomberg refers to, the $318 billion worth of acquisitions in Europe, the Chinese have spent 45% more in Europe than they have in the United States, as they acquired 360 companies. This moment, as Chairman Rohrabacher mentions, there is no general screening process in the European Union. Only, as you mentioned, 12 out of 28 EU countries have a screening process of their own. The important thing here, I think, is that we're seeing France and Germany, which is the core of the economic union, is actually starting to think about screening. We heard President Macron talk about protective Europe a couple of months ago. And so this is going to be important. The other thing that we can do is set that example. And here I think that we need to show the Europeans that we have the political will to stop Chinese investment, because then I think they will. And that will be the example that you talk about, Chairman Meeks. I didn't plan to speak about Lodges, but it's something very close to my heart. Just before I run out of time, I want to mention that if the Chinese were to get the air base in Lodges, they would be able to be closer to Washington and New York than Pearl Harbor is to Los Angeles and San Francisco. That is something we cannot permit. Thank you.